Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you back to another episode of Geopolitics East and West, where myself, your host Adil Raja, with Theo A Mullis, we take gives our take. I give the Eastern perspective on geopolitics, and Theo, my friend over here, gives the perspective, the Western perspective on geopolitics. And today we've got very interesting topics lined up for the discussion. Mainly four major topics. Firstly, the negotiations going on between Iran and the US at Islamabad. The expected negotiations should be a better word because there are still a lot of hiccups, but we will discuss those. Then, we have seen that Trump administration has threatened the Pope. We need to discuss that as well. The Ukraine war update also needs to be discussed. And then Chinese military secrets have been hacked. That is a massive story. I mean, it has been published in some of the Western outlets, but nobody is talking about it. But we'll welcome Theo, and we'll straight away, jump to the brass tacks, and we'll talk about the negotiations which are expected to be held in Islamabad, in Pakistan, between the US and Iran. There are a lot of apprehensions about the way these negotiations are going to be held, whether they're going to be held, whether the ceasefire is permanent ceasefire, permanent peace, and peace is the logical way forward, or just a strategic pause. So, firstly, Theo, do you think this is a ceasefire or a strategic pause for replenishment and regrouping for the U.S. and given Iran the same opportunity, or it is a serious attempt towards making a peace deal, while we see that Israel is still attacking Lebanon,
Yeah.
which they say is not part of the deal. The US says not part of the deal. Iran says it's definitely part of the deal. Pakistan also says it is part of the deal. So what's actually going on? Do you think this peace will hold? Is this, or it's just a strategic pause, or do you think that President Trump, as some would say, is desperate for a peace deal, for a way out, for a face saving, Maya? Or no, that's not it. Israel is actually controlling the entire game and the narrative in the US. What are your observations and opinion about it?
So I think it's certainly fair to say that Israel was the catalyst for this. That started this. They recognized that Iranian leadership was all going to be in one place at one time, saw an opportunity, and they were going to go for it anyway. But I do think that this has gone very, very badly for the US-Israeli alliance, and that Trump is desperate for a way out, any way out. I mean, bear in mind, this man, he combines malignant narcissism with potentially, looks like dementia, depending on who you ask, and he wants to move on. He wants this done. He recognizes that this war is polling very badly in the United States, and to be honest, he hasn't won it. I was listening to a former British general on the radio yesterday, and he put it very well. He says to win, all the Iranian regime, more accurately, has to do is survive. To win, the United States has to win. And that's the difference. It's much easier to do one than the other. And we've potentially starting these negotiations and this ceasefire. Will it hold? I mean, the Israelis immediately started attacks in Lebanon, as you said, and then the Iranians closed the Straits of Hormuz immediately afterwards. You've got ships lining up and conversations happening
Closed.
between.
It is still closed.
It's still
Strait of
closed.
Hormuz is still closed.
Yeah. But what you had ships trying to pass through and having conversations with the Iranians. The ship captains thinking, we thought the straits were open. The Iranians saying, no, it's not open yet. Not to mention now they have to pay, and that's really significant because the Straits of Hormuz is recognized as an international shipping lane. Anybody can sail through it freely. And that's really key to the world continuing to trade, to all of these things. And they're demanding, now there's money for it. It would be the same, say, for example, if Britain were to demand payment for travel through the English Channel or even the Straits of Gibraltar. So that's very significant. And the fact that it was open before and this war started and now it's closed, and to keep it open again, you're going to have to pay. That can't be anything other than a loss for the United States and for Israel. It really can't. And it just shows, I mean, what I said in earlier conversations, don't start a war without a plan. And they didn't have a plan, nor did they have any legal basis to do this. And nor did they have what we can see from the destruction of parts of US bases, from the waves of drones heading into US allies in the region. They weren't prepared. They didn't have the kit in place. So it's the word Suez is being used quite a lot in reference to the 1956 Suez crisis, which was the end of Britain's empire. That is the moment when Britain realized-ish that it's no longer a superpower. It's no longer a world power. And people are asking now, is this war America's Suez?
A very important question. I mean, it is definitely a strategic defeat. If not strategic defeat, it's also not a strategic win, but definitely strategically speaking, Iran has an upper hand. Tactically, the US has got an upper hand and Israel has got an upper hand, but strategically, definitely, Iran has been able to, Iran has been able to,
for the United States. 100%.
Yeah. So just the way you said that Strait of Hormuz was open for everyone, and now it's not, and Iran is demanding a toll system over there, and they're already charging toll on, they're seeking reparations. So anyway, coming to the negotiations in Pakistan, Islamabad, there is a lot of fuss about the tweet done by the Pakistani puppet prime minister. I would always call him puppet prime minister because he is a result of a hybrid regime which was enforced as per the Commonwealth election report, as per the election manipulation. So obviously he is a puppet prime minister. The real power in Pakistan is held illegitimately by the Pakistani military. And the evidence is that President Trump, in his Truth Social post, mentioned both the prime minister and the army chief, the military chief. So obviously, these are two different. These are the facts on ground. You cannot challenge those. But having said that, the negotiations in Islamabad are being presented as a sort of a diplomatic coup, and as in the Telegraph story, the favorite field marshal was presented as a global peacemaker. So do you believe that the Pakistani military de facto ruler, the military dictator, is the global peacemaker in this case? What's going on? What's your unbiased take on it?
So I've been reading reports that the United States, or the Trump administration, approached the Pakistanis to try to get negotiations opened. And, well, it's a win-win for the Pakistanis, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, for the Pakistani regime, at least. They can present themselves in this light. And I've seen posts on Twitter, exactly the same post, right? So it's bots. I was traveling to Canada. I was traveling to Saudi. I was traveling, to France, and I handed over my Pakistani passport. And the border agent said, "Oh, thank you so much. Your country is an agent for peace in the world." And that's bots, isn't it? Why so much of that? Like, why do you think that is happening? That's the narrative that the Pakistani bots are like pushing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I mean, they're Theo, they are desperate for some kind of a positive narrative because they've wrecked the economy of Pakistan. They've wrecked the international reputation of Pakistan. They have destroyed the domestic industry in Pakistan. They made huge promises that they'll bring foreign direct investments worth, worth billions of dollars. On record, the Field Marshal, he has been saying that I'll bring 80 to 90 billion US dollars of investment from the Gulf countries, but on ground, the UAE is now is pushing them to take back the loan which was being kept to keep the country afloat and keep the country's foreign reserves afloat. So the UAE is asking the loan back. Nobody is giving them more loans. Pakistani economy is living from one bailout to another bailout. So they've got nothing to show for themselves after the regime change against Imran Khan. So they are desperate for some kind of some kind of a win, right?
But a win they can bring to the people. Yeah, and it's quite common, isn't it? Like, and it's exactly the same thing that Trump is doing. The same reason he started this war. Domestic policy is really hard, especially if you're very unpopular, which Trump is and which the Pakistani regime are. So you engage in foreign policy, because foreign policy seems easy. You can get these big wins. You can try to increase your soft power, or in the United States' case, you can blow things up. I saw a commentator, and it was one line, and it really sums up this conflict, because I've from the start I've said this is a wag the dog thing.
The wag the dog information. You're right. Yeah, definitely. You're right. But about this diplomatic win, the last time Pakistan had such a big diplomatic win was when in July 1971, the US National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger, back then, he made a secret groundbreaking trip to Beijing, China, using Pakistan as a vital intermediary. That's part of history, right? But what's also part of history is that was in July 1971. In December of the same year, 1971, Pakistan broke into two. East Pakistan became Bangladesh, and that is also history. So these international relations, wins or diplomatic endeavors, they don't bring results domestically for any country if history is to be taken seriously. I mean, Pakistan was a key player as the US client state in the Cold War, and it was the catalyst in the breakage of USSR. Sorry?
It's about shoring up the regime's position internally. That's what this is about. And don't get me wrong, I want this war with Iran to end, and the straits need to be reopened, because 20% of the world's oil flows through there. Everybody's food prices will go up. Everybody's heating prices will go up, and that's not just in Europe. That's pretty much almost globally, right? This war is bad for everybody, apart from maybe Vladimir Putin. He's okay with it.
And President Xi Jinping as well.
Well, China just has to do nothing and appear to be the sensible person. Although they should be drawing some lessons from
we'll come to China, because China is clearly the winner in this war so far. But before we go there, Theo, you were talking about these barrage of information operation or propaganda tweets. Like I've got it on record over here. As you can see, there are hundreds and thousands of tweets like these, which were made.
Exactly those.
Yeah. So now these tweets, they're basically the Pakistani Army's Inter-Services Public Relations Information Operation Directorate. Since I've worked with them, so I know these are the handles being run by them. Because and this is in fact a very poor copycat reproduction of my genuine expression once Prime Minister Imran Khan was in power, and I landed at London Heathrow. And I tweeted that, I presented my passport, Pakistani passport, to the immigration officer at Heathrow. And Imran Khan was in power at that time. And he recently, in 2018, he had come to power. And he asked me about Imran Khan. And he said, well, he was a cricket fan as well. And the immigration officer said, how's Imran Khan doing? And I said, he's doing very well. I voted for him. In fact, he's my local MP. And for the first time in my life, I've ever voted. And I voted for Imran Khan. And he said, good on you, mate. And we've got high hopes for you and best of luck. And that made me proud of my passport. But this copycat reproduction by the Inter-Services Public Relations Information Operation Directorate and the propaganda cell of the Pakistani government running under the present Information Minister Atta Tarar and his digital media cell, it is a cheap reproduction of an honest expression, So it definitely shows desperation in Pakistan that they need to give a win to the people and to show them that we have worth something.
Yeah, they need a win, and it's you can see why Trump and the Pakistani regime are doing this together. They both need a win. Trump needs to get out of Iran because he's recognizing finally that it's a disaster. And I think if anybody's head is on the chopping block, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, he will call himself the Secretary of War because he's like that. He's probably going to be out in short order. I give him maybe a month, 2 months left in the job. But this really was his thing. He really wanted to do it because the man's a child. He just wants to use his toys and blow things up. And it just speaks to the utter immaturity, incompetence, and depravity of the Trump regime. And another commentator put it extremely well. I would quote them if I could remember exactly where it was, but it's just stuck in my head. The Trump regime blew up Iranian schoolgirls to silence American schoolgirls.
Before we move to China, which is clearly the singular winner, if we have to decide upon one winner in this war, so far it is China. I'll come to that. But irrespective of that, the greatest hack in petabytes, I've never heard about the Chinese military secrets. Yeah. I've never heard the term before. But obviously, there have been a hack, and we'll come to that. But before that, we've heard, Theo, that the Trump administration has threatened the Pope. But even before that, give us an update about the Ukraine war situation. There have been an attack on ferry, some kind of a ferry, very important ferry. What's going on over there in Ukraine? And also give us your brief comments on you wished for the Ukrainians to make a defense pact with the Saudis, and the pact is there now. And the Ukrainians are providing anti-drone specialties to the Saudis. What do you have to say to that?
I think it's a very good idea. The Ukrainians need foreign investment to fight their war against imperialism, and the Saudis and the other Gulf states can provide that. The Ukrainians are experts at air defense. They are better than anybody else in the world, certainly better than the Americans. I mean, many more Patriots were used in this short war against Iran than have been used in the entire of Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine so far. So no, it's a strategic. That aspect of this is a bit of a strategic win for Ukraine. They can go onto the global stage. They can come back with investment, and they can go out there and appear to be an intelligent, reasonable partner. Because generally that's what they are, compared to the United States. And bear in mind, this assistance was also offered to the United States, who rejected it, saying, oh, we don't need it. We'll just fire our $1 million missiles at these $30,000 drones. So, yeah, stupid. As for the current state of the conflict, the Ukrainians are doing better than they have in a very long time across the front lines. There are new technologies being deployed. So one report I saw the other day was a use of barbed wire against fiber optic drones. Now, fiber optic drones are very dangerous. They are very dangerous. They can't be jammed. They've got very long range, up to 40 kilometers. They can sit and wait in ambush by the side of the road, and then the pilot's alerted, or sometimes even just AI will make it take off and fly into whatever drives by. But they string just a single thread of razor wire and then turn it with a small electric motor. And what that does is it catches the fiber optic lines, because the drone drops them as it flies over, and cuts them, which means which means signals lost to the drone, it falls out of the sky. Very clever innovations like this that the Ukrainians are doing, which makes them the experts in air defense. But additionally, there was a special forces attack on a Russian ferry, forgive me for pronunciation here, the Slavyanin, which was the last railway ferry operating in the Kerch Strait. Now, the Kerch Strait is a body of water between the Azov Sea and the Black Sea. It sits between Crimea, which is occupied by Russia, and Russia itself. They've built a bridge over it, which has been repeatedly attacked and it isn't in terribly good shape. So they also ferry troops over, and they've managed to disable the last railway ferry. Bear in mind, Russia can't bring any more ships through the Bosphorus due to Turkey not allowing ships in active war to pass through those straits. So disabling that ferry means fewer troops, less equipment, supplies, fuel, oil, bullets, shells, whatever you may need, can get to the Russian troops in Crimea. And if you're looking for an indication of where the Ukrainians would like to go in future, that's probably it. It's long been commonly discussed that Ukraine's likely war plan, their best hope, well, not their best hope, that's the wrong way of putting it, but what they would very much like to do is to be able to cut off Crimea from the rest of the Russian forces. Probably not possible at the moment, unless something really significant happens in Russia, and quite a lot of significant things are happening in Russia, regards turning off the internet for everybody, it seems. But it's certainly part of their plans. So that's quite significant overall. But the war continues. It's a slow war. It's going to be a long war. There's maybe another couple of years left in this thing, depending on how Russia goes. Because the United States has far less influence on Ukraine than it did in 22-23. The US could pull out, and Ukraine would still be fighting and capable of surviving. Again, as I said about Iran and the United States, where the US has to win and Iran has to survive, the same applies between Russia and Ukraine. Russia has to win, Ukraine has to survive. And it's much easier to survive than to win.
So, Theo, that's very interesting. Thank you for the update. Moving forward, what is the deal about the Trump administration, threatening the Pope, which we have labeled as MAGA versus the Holy See? So, what's going on over there?
So, this is all part of a wider rift between Pope Leo XIV and MAGA Christianity. This is a report from the Free Press saying that, I think it was in January, a senior US defense official, Elbridge Colby, who's Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, summoned Cardinal Christophe Pierre, who's the Vatican's ambassador to America. Remember that the Holy See, the Vatican, is a country, so they have ambassadors who tend to be cardinals to various nations, and they have a foreign policy, etc. And according to this report, Colby is quoted as saying, the United States has the military power to do whatever it wants in the world. The Catholic Church had better take its side. Now then, of course, the meeting got heated, and an unnamed official apparently brought up the Avignon papacy, which is a time in Europe's history in the 14th century where France, with its military power, its military strength, was able to essentially control the papacy, control the Vatican, control the Catholic Church. Saying, in effect, do what we want, or we will leverage our military force and make you. Which is wild. Completely wild. The Catholic Church has no armies, has no battalions. It's the land it actually has is a rump state in Rome. It's you can walk from one side to the other in about 10 minutes. But what it represents is the largest religion in the world. And this rift that we're seeing between Pope Leo XIV, who was born in Chicago, he's an American who also holds Peruvian citizenship, and MAGA Christianity is really significant. The Pope has repeatedly made comments that have been fairly accurately, I'd say, interpreted as coming out against what the United States is doing. On Easter, the most important day in the year for Christians and Catholics especially, he said that Christ does not hear the prayers of those who wage war.
That's a powerful statement.
And also on Easter, at the Pentagon, there are a number of services, etc. There was no Catholic service. So there were Protestant services, but no Catholic one. And this is part of the wider rift. You've got Catholicism, Protestantism, and Orthodoxy, generally in Christianity. This is very much simplifying it. There's a lot of different denominations. But in the United States, in more recent years, there's generally been recognition of all of them. And then to not allow, or to say we're not going to have a Catholic Mass on Easter when you are having other Masses is quite significant. So a bit, certainly a rift between MAGA Christianity and the Holy See, because the Holy See is offering much more moral clarity and guidance. I mean, you had Pete Hegseth, who is an evangelical Protestant Christian, praying that the troops conduct their duties with just violence of action. It's very and this is about the Iran war. It's very crusade kind of language, and that's very dangerous. Bear in mind, the guy does have Deus Vult written on the inside of his forearm and on the inside of his bicep, which means God wills it, and it is a direct reference to the Crusades. So that's where this man's head is. And Pope Leo is doing everything he can in his power, significant amount of soft power the Catholic Church has, to reject this. So he's threatened with military action. I don't know how military force could be leveraged against the Vatican, because doing that would involve invading Italy. But yet another indication of just how far MAGA is taking the United States down the pit.
Split within the MAGA camp as well because of the Iran war, and that split
certainly there's
combined with the I won't say persecution, but opening a new front, or antagonizing the Pope would further widen that split, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, bear in mind, American Catholics, there's a strong conservative Republican voting caucus among American Catholics. I mean, J.D. Vance is a Catholic.
Yeah.
And that splitting from MAGA over this, bear in mind, this war is very unpopular. Trump was voted in on a peace ticket, on a non-interventionist, an isolationist ticket. It's significant, and he's floundering. And like I said many times before, this war is an example of wag the dog, and it's an example of trying to get a short win to shore up his pollings as the elections are on the way. November is not a very long way away. in the American political cycle.
So once you say whack the dog scenario, and we've discussed it, for those of our audience who still don't know what's whack the dog, it was a movie made with Robert De Niro in it and Dustin Hoffman in it, and it was basically a presidential affair, a scandal, a sexual scandal about the president had to be, the focus of the media had to be taken away from it. So a fake war narrative was created with the country. In fact, it became a real war, and a hero was presented. In this particular case, with President Trump, it is the Jeffrey Epstein files, in fact.
Yeah.
And the Epstein clause, as the opposition would say, is trying to, they initiated the Iran war, and obviously, Bibi Netanyahu took advantage of the entire scenario. That is why some would say that Epstein was linked with the Israeli Mossad, the intelligence agency, allegedly. But, well, that debate is aside. The whack the dog scenario in this case is that the entire world, and especially the American voters' attention, is being drawn away from the Epstein file and the presence of President Trump and the relationship between President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein in this particular matter, and since they're going into the November election as well. So anyway, moving forward, we're not going to discuss it any further because we still got a very important topic ahead of us. The Iran war, which is the principal discussion in this episode. We've discussed who are clear winners. There have been no clear winners, but one, China. China is, as per the Telegraph story, is secretly supplying the fuel for the Iranian missiles and enabling Iran to present a sustained counterattack. And their counterattack strategy has been quite clear. In fact, it has been a counterattack strategy. There's been no strategy to defend themselves. They have been continuously counterattacking the Gulf and Israel, and they've been doing it with drones and ballistic missiles. So the ballistic missiles fuels have been allegedly provided by the Chinese first. Second, the Chinese buy the Iranian oil, of course, and they have provided Iran with the economic wherewithal to sustain this defense, not the offensive defense, I would say, and to keep Iran fighting. And in doing so, they have also tested an alternative payment system with the petrodollar. Now we've got petro yuan already being tried and tested in the Strait of Hormuz. So strategically, economically, China is obviously the winner. Now these missiles and this defense technology that the US is using and Israel is using uses the rare earth element, which is on which there is a Chinese monopoly, and only the Chinese can
not quite a monopoly.
I mean, so on processing of it,
a monopoly in terms of extraction and processing, but there are significant deposits.
That's true. That's true. And then the Chinese are in a position to because the war will have to ultimately end, and there will be reconstruction in Iran and Gulf, even in Israel. So the Chinese companies are in a position to provide the reconstruction, logistics, and the companies would be there coming forward to rebuild the infrastructure. They'll be making money out of that as well. But I think the biggest win have been that the Chinese tested the alternative monetary system successfully first, and then they definitely dented the US unipolar superpower status. We thought it's going to take another 5 decades. But the Iran war is going to be a catalyst.
Well, I would say that the Chinese have done nothing.
That's the art of war is. That's the art of war is. You win without fighting the war.
I think it was Napoleon who said, "Never interrupt your enemy while they're making a mistake." So on China, there's a few things I want to say regarding this, though.
Sure, go on.
China really needs to draw lessons from this. lessons from how Iran has managed to, if not tactically defeat the United States, certainly make it very painful and strategically very difficult up to a defeat for the United States. And they need to take those lessons of small drones, of cheap ballistic missiles, and then they need to consider Taiwan. And they need to consider what they want to do in Taiwan. Do they want to risk an invasion 70 miles away from the mainland to take a spit of land which is wealthy, which is extremely well armed? Do they want to risk that? Because Ukraine has showed it, and Iran has showed it. Small nations can defeat larger nations. And nations without a navy can defeat nations with one. And Taiwan has a navy. Just released and launched a couple new submarines last year. And they are pretty high tech. But that aside, I do think China comes out as the winner here. Certainly, testing of a new economic model, moving away from the petrodollar, which is really the thing that keeps the United States afloat. And it just seems sensible and stable. And you can do it. You know they're bastards, but you can do a deal with them. And that's what the Canadians are doing. That's what the Europeans are going to be doing. Because there is stability. We know they are the devil we know better than the absolute chaos we're seeing on the other side of the Atlantic. This is from a European perspective. And this is why us and the Canadians are going to be doing more deals with China. And I don't like that because they are very unpleasant. What they're doing to the Uyghurs can only be called a genocide. What they've done in Hong Kong and what they plan on doing in Taiwan. If they invade Taiwan, there shall be rivers of blood, because the Taiwanese are not going to take that lying down. But they are the winners here, because the United States has decided that it wants to cede its position.
Theo, but the United States has also provided a precedence to countries like China and Russia to go their way. For example,
I think Russia did the precedent first.
Yeah, that's true. But in the case of China, in the case of Taiwan, there is a U.S. precedence now that you can, if you're a superpower, you can do what you want to do. But having said that, coming to the elephant in the room in this scenario, how come nobody is talking about the MAGA hack, this hacking of the Chinese military secrets, and sample has been released on the web?
Like MEGA, right? MEGA, not MAGA.
Not MAGA. No.
Yeah,
massive.
No.
Let's use the word massive.
Huge.
Massive. And petabytes, they say, yeah? Petabytes, yeah? So I've heard about terabytes, but petabytes, wow. So they're saying they've hacked into the data, the Chinese defense data, into petabytes. And what does that signify? And what does that mean?
So this is being reported by CNN as of yesterday.
Yeah.
10 petabytes. Now, a petabyte apparently is 1,000 terabytes of sensitive information is believed by experts to have been stolen from the National Supercomputing Center in Tianjin, which is a centralized hub, basically, a massive data center that provides infrastructure services for like 6,000 clients, so private businesses as well as government organizations across the country. And that includes advanced science and defense agencies. And samples of the stolen data may include research across various fields. And this is an account calling itself Flaming China, posted a sample of the alleged data set on anonymous Telegram channel. So take this with the appropriate level of salt. On February the 6th, claiming it contained research across various fields, including aerospace engineering, military research, bioinformatics, fusion simulation, and more. And so this appears to be data from the bleeding edge of China's military and scientific research 10 petabytes. I can't quite fathom how much information that is. But if that's now out there, then who could do this kind of level of hack? Well,
the Israelis or the Americans?
the Americans could pull it off. The Israelis, less so. I mean, Stuxnet was their big thing, but that was helped by the Americans. Could even be a private hacker, but to get into a data center like that, which has got to be extremely well hardened and defended, I think could only be a state.
So
Probably the Americans.
Theo, by any chance do you suspect but by any chance do you suspect the Russians?
Oh, I mean, if the Chinese find out it's the Russians, there will be hell to pay for the Russians, because they are very vulnerable in the east to China, and China's already in, doing a sort of soft incursion in Siberia, and they have a lot of historical grievances against Russia due to Russia's imperialism in China during what China calls the century of humiliation. Russia was one of many powers, including Britain, France, and others, who were imperialist in China. So I think China may feel like it's owed a bit of a debt. If it turns out to be the Russians, and the Russians do have pretty good hacking capabilities, but they are pointed at Europe and Ukraine at the moment. So I'd be surprised if they have the bandwidth in terms of sort of human resources to be able to pull that kind of thing off. My bet, and this is a guess, bit of an educated guess, but a guess, is the Americans. Now, if the Americans get all of this, well, that's quite significant. And it's very significant for the Chinese to lose it. And I think that some people are probably going to get shot over this.
Yeah, I'm sure that's how things work in China. And if you're getting shot because of corruption, I've heard that you even have to pay for the bullet which is being put in your head. That's how they operate, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Moving back to
quite a significant moment, especially because China is world leading in a lot of fields, especially in renewables. And in renewables and robotics, it's doing extremely well. And if the Americans are able to, if whoever is able to just nick all of that, I do question the wisdom of having all of this stored in a single data center, though. It seems like putting all of your extremely valuable eggs in one basket.
Yeah. I mean, they must never have thought that hacking that sort of a facility would have been possible. Obviously, they thought that it could never be hacked. But the way things work is that at the end of the day, human intelligence plays a role in the cyber, spying. So they must be having some sort of a mole inside their operation for whoever has done this for them. If it's a CNN story, most probably Americans have done it. Allegedly, Americans.
That's how the Americans and Israelis got the virus into the Iranian nuclear centrifuges, Stuxnet, the first virus to actually cause something to explode. Is they just left infected USBs around Tehran, and the virus spread through various computers, did nothing until it hit the correct operating system that the centrifuges were used in the right manner, and then it activated and did its thing. But that would have taken a number of people moving data from USB to USB, probably not even knowing, until somebody plugged the wrong USB, probably didn't even know they were doing it, into one of the computers that controlled the centrifuges, thereby getting past that air gap.
Very interesting times we're living in. But the final question, Theo. In the US, they say that the US is all about the post-AI revolution. But the post-AI revolution technology is dependent upon the petrodollar. or the investment coming in from the Gulf countries. What kind of future for this post-AI revolution vis-a-vis the investment coming in from Gulf do you see in the future for the US after US power has been, definitely dented in a large way?
Certainly
What do you think is
dented.
the future of the world?
I think it's a very good question that the Gulf countries are going to be asking themselves, is how much do we need the United States now? Because the United States has proved that it wasn't really able to defend them, which is the whole basis of their deal. Invest in us and host our bases, and you'll be defended from whatever regional power, from whoever else, from each other. And that didn't work, did it? So you've seen the Gulf states make deals with Ukraine. And if they want to break off from the United States, and if the United States wants to break off from Europe, which it appears to want to do at the moment, then where does that leave American power? That leaves a pretty significant vacuum, and somebody is going to fill it. And I think it'll be a race between a rearming, reasserting Europe and a very powerful China. And my bet would probably be on China. And we'll see.
Definitely, we'll see.
Yeah. Interesting.
Thank you, Theo.
Well, I think that's a curse.
Yeah, thank you, Theo, for this. I mean, we've missed. I think, we missed the last two shows, so this show went, a bit over time. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we hope that you like this show and all the topics were of interest to you. Do give us your feedback, and it's a collaboration between Dictator v Democrats and Soldier Speaks, and do give a follow to Dictators v Democrat as well. And details could be found in the description of the video. Take care of yourself. Thank you, Theo, for being our guest again today. Thank you.
Thank you. Ta-da.